Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. We are going to be learning Maseches Nazir Daf Mem Daled. And tonight and for the next many nights, we'll be learning as a refuah shleima for my uncle. And I'm actually going to be going to visiting him, please God, this coming week. And he's in Israel. So I'm leaving Motzei Shabbos and I'll be back Wednesday. So we'll be back in person Thursday. I'll record and post throughout the trip. I'll do it. I'll have time to do that and plenty of ample time to learn on the plane. So we'll get, thank you very much. We'll get in as much learning as we can, and we'll be on target. And next Thursday we'll do a blot and a half like we normally would. Okay, we're starting at the new Mishnah on Mem Daled Amud Aleph, and we're going to go to the Mishnah on the top of Mem Hey Amud Aleph. This first part of the sugya is a little dizzying. Nothing is complicated, but it's a lot of very similar questions framed one on top of the other, and it's all about what we can and what we can't learn from the three areas of Isser of Nazirus. And let's start with the Mishnah. Mas Nisan, Shlosha Minin Isurin Benazir. There are three types of Isser in regards to a Nazir. Hatuma, V'hatiglachas, V'yotze Min HaGefen. As we know, you're not supposed to become Tamei Meis, you're not supposed to get a haircut, and you're not supposed to drink any or eat any grape products. And the previous Mishnah was also like very like ABCs. Oh, really? Thank you. By the way, the Shas was not written like an outline. You have to. It's all integrated. You're picking things up in Sota from yesterday's sugya. Like that. That's why there's no Daf Aleph. Everything is you're chasing your own tail in a good way. Yeah. And says the Mishnah, let's delineate some of the chumras of each of these three areas. Chumra betuma uvetiglachas. There's a chumra by tuma and by getting haircuts, mi biyotze min hagefen, which is that shatuma v'atiglachas sosrin, that when there's tuma and when a person gets a haircut and they do so be'isr during their nazirus, it's soser, it ruins an element of their count of their nazirus. But v'ayotze min hagefen eno soser. It's a chiddush. That's chakachu. We look back now with all of our wisdom, and we realize that we've never heard about this. We've never heard about stira when it comes to gefen, and that's because there is no stira by gefen. Then the Mishnah continues. There's also chomer bayotze min hagefen, that it's low. Oh, I skipped a line. No, I didn't. Chomer bayotze min hagefen mi betuma v'tiglachas. And while there is a big kula by yotze min hagefen, there's also a chomer by yotze min hagefen. What's that? Sheyotze min hagefen lo hutar michlalo. When it comes to wine, there's never a kula, ever, during Nazirus, but v'tuma v'tiglachas hutar michlalan. However, when it comes to Tuma and Tiglachas, their heterim are built into the Isra of Nazirus. V'tiglachas mitzvah, we know, as we've learned over the last many blot, that when there is a mitzora whose mitzora falls out during Nazirus, and he has to clean up his mitzora status, then he has a mitzvah for Tiglachas. Good. And as well, of a meis mitzvah, we also know that there are times that a Nazir can become Tamei Meis, even in his Nazirus. So wine, there are no exceptions. Kiddush, Havdalah, Purim, Pesach, no heterim, nothing. There's never a heter to drink wine, no grapes, no nothing during the time of Nazirus. And the chomer betuma mi betiglachas. There's also a bigger chomer by tuma than there is with tiglachas. And we'll see in a moment why we left out wine. Shatuma so seres esakol v'chavan le'a korban. That by tuma it uproots your entire nazirus, however long it is. V'tiglachas ein so seres el shloshim ein chayavan aleha korban. So the reason why wine is left out is because there's no stira by wine. But within the two things that have stira, we had to make sure we knew which one was on top of the other. And tuma is considered worse than tiglachas in that way. Okay, so far so good. The Gemara, between right here, the opening of the Gemara, and the very last word on the page is going to ask 9 questions about chumras. Can we learn one from the other? Why? For example, if we know that there's stira by tuma, why don't we also say that there's stira by wine? They're all in the same genre of nazirus. Why don't we learn from one another? That's going to be the tipus, the profile of questions that we're going to see. Lots of attempted kal v'chomers solved by a pasuk. We know that a kal v'chomer is one of the Yud Gimel Midos Shator Nedrashes, but a kal v'chomer is a very powerful derech halimud. So in order to uproot something like that, you need something bigger than a kal v'chomer, which is a pasuk, which is some of the examples that we're going to see. So it says the Gemara, v'tuma, why don't we say that by tuma, the lo tusar michlala, why don't we say that tuma is never allowed, kal v'chomer miyayin, and we could build a kal v'chomer from wine? Umayayin she'eno soser lo hutar michlalo. When it comes to wine where there's not even stira, there's no heter. Then tuma soseres. Then tuma, which does have this chumra aspect to it, which is that it is soseres. Eino din shelo tusar michlalo. It shouldn't have these loosey-goosey rules that like, oh, if it's a mace, no, it should be just as strict as everything else. So why is it that we don't say that by tuma, that there is this more limited din like we see by yayin? And the Gemara says, great kal v'chomer, but the pasuk is stronger. It's like you're playing war, they put down a king, you put down the ace. And here's the victory. Talmud lomar la'aviv u'limo lo yitama. That we know, a din in Chumash. But la'aviv u'limo lo yitama, but mitame hu lemeis mitzvah. We do see that by a Nazir, that taka, they have an obligation to take care of a mace mitzvah, even though that means that they're going to become tamei. So therefore, your kal v'chomer is great. It's very Sephardic. But the problem is that there's a pasuk in Chumash that's stronger. That's question number 1, asked and answered. 3 lines before the wide lines, mem daled amud aleph. Why don't we say v'yayin yutar michlalo? Why don't we have something built in, a heter for wine, kal v'chomer mituma? What's the kal v'chomer from tuma? Ma tuma shi soseres hutra michlala. It's inverting the previous argument. Just like by tuma, we see that there is stira and there's built-in heterim. Yayin she'eno soser eno din shutar michlala. Then wine, which has no stira, it's a lower level, it's less chamor, eno din, all the more so that it should have a heter built in. Says the Gemara, great kal v'chomer, but doesn't hold up to water. You put out the king and I put out the ace. Amar krami yain v'sheichar yazir less or yain mitzvah ki yain rishus. We've already seen this. Even for yain mitzvah, which is the chiddush. Of course, yain rishus you're not allowed, but for yain mitzvah, have a mina that maybe we should have said that it's mutter kamash malan, that it's not. Question number 3, first of the very long lines, 2/3 of the way down. The yain yistor esakol. Maybe we should say that there should be stira by yayin, that if a person who's a Nazir drinks wine during his Nazirus, maybe it should ruin his Nazirus, esakol, kal v'chomer mituma. Uma tuma, shehutcher michlala, so seres esakol. Just like by tuma, where it does have built-in heterim, and still it's so ser, yayin shelo hutar michlalo, yayin that has no heterim built in, lo kol shekain sheyistor, all the more so that it should cause for a stira. Says the Gemara, nice try. Omar Krab Hayamim Rishonim Yiplu Ki Tamei Nizro. Tuma so seres. Ve'ein hayayin so seres. You're right in svara, but you're wrong in reality. The pasuk is stronger than your svara, but good svara. Question number 4. Hatiglachas, when it comes to cutting hair, why don't we say tistor esakol? We said in our mission, it's only tistor shloshim. It only uproots 30 days of a nazir, and it would have to be a nazir, so it's longer than shloshim. Let's say it's 100 days, so you're stira. We need 30 days for the hair to grow back. So why is it that we say hatiglachas is only 30 days? We should say tistor esakol, and it should be a kal v'chomer mituma. 5 lines into the wide lines. Umatuma shelo asuba mitame kimitama. So seres esakol. In the world of tuma, if I make the nazir tameh, that's the mitame. That's different than kimi tama, where he makes himself tameh. And there still, so seres esakol, tiglachas, when it comes to a haircut, sha'asu ba megaleach kemis galeach, it's the same din that would be the person who, let's say I go over to a Nazir and I cut his hair, I get malkos for that. But it's not true by tuma. If I throw a mace onto a Nazir and he becomes tameh mace, that's not, I don't get malkos for that. So this is the distinction between tuma and miskalech. By the tuma of the Nazir, if I cause tuma of a Nazir, I push him onto a kever, so it's not nice, I'm not a nice person, but I don't get malkos. If he jumps on a kever, he gets malkos. Masha'ein kain, when it comes to the hair cutting, no matter how the hair is removed, if I remove it or if you remove it yourself, there's going to be, in such a case, there's going to be an isser of megalech, even for the one who shaves. So eno din shetzistor esakol. So why is it that there's more of a mekel stira when it comes to megaleach, if it has a more machmir approach of who can remove your hair? And says the Gemara, because Amar Krab Hayamim Rishonim Diplu Ki Tamei Nizro Tuma so seres esakol ve'intiglacha so seres esakol. It's a drasha. That was question number 4, and we're up to question number 5. The tuma naseba. Why don't we say by tuma that the mitame should be kimitame kal v'chomer mitiglachas? Why don't we taka say that the person who causes tuma to the Nazir should be just like the Nazir himself who jumps on a kever? Uma, what's the kal v'chomer? Kal v'chomer tiglachas. Uma tiglachas she'eno so seres ela shloshim. Just like by the tiglachas, why someone gets a haircut when they should not, and it only sets you back 30 days. And in such a case, that's a kula. But nevertheless, we see that asaba megalech kimiskalech, the guy giving the haircut to the Nazir is no different than the Nazir cutting his own hair. Then tuma shisoser sesakol tuma, which is even more chamor, because it's soser sesakol, it's not 30 days, it's the whole time. Eino din shenase ba mitame kimitama. It should at least be equal. Why are you saying that there's still a difference between causing tuma where there's no malchus versus causing a haircut where there is malchus? Omar Kra says the Gemara 4/5 of the way down. Vitame rosh vitime. I think it's vitime, no? Where's this pasuk? I'm looking in the wrong place. It is vitime rosh nizro, limitame rosh nizro, only for the mitame, the one who does his own hair, but not for somebody else. But again, your svara is great. Your svara is great, but it's not accurate because the pasuk says otherwise. Let's try again. Question number 6. V'tiglachas. When it comes to a haircut, we should say lo naseba megalech kemiskalech kal v'chomer mitu. Maybe we should reverse our svara. If you're going to say that we have a pasuk that says that only the mitame himself, the Nazir himself, can generate tuma, but not an outside person. If that's true, then maybe we should say that the megalech is not going to be chayiv, the haircutting guy is not going to be chayiv malchus, and only the Nazir himself, kal v'chomer mituma. By tuma, where it was a full interruption, you have to start over your entire nazirus, and there the mitame and the mitama are different. Then tiglacha she'enu soseres al shloshim yom lo kol sheken shelo nase megalech kemiskalech. They should at least be on common ground. Okay, we understand that the mitame and the mitama are different because of the pasuk. Fine, then let's learn megalech from miskalech. Let's have them be the same din, at least that only one is going to be chayav, which is the Nazir cutting his own hair. So says the Gemara, we can't. Omar Kra, ta'ar lo ya'avor al rosho. Kari ba lo ya'avor hu, v'lo ya'avor la'acher. Look at the language. It's not lo ta'avor. It's that lo ya'avor, it shall not be removed. It's not a din in who removes it. It's a din in that it was removed, and therefore we cannot make a distinction between the hair cutter, who is an external person, versus the Nazir himself, who cuts his own hair. And that's why we need the distinction that when it comes to Tumah, the pasuk distinguishes between the Mitame and the Mitama. And therefore, if an outside person makes a Nazir Tameh, there's no Malkos. But if the person himself, the Nazir, makes himself Tameh, there's Malkos. Mashe'en came when it comes to Miskaleach, to getting a haircut, both the Nazir himself shaving his head or another person, it doesn't matter, because the Lashon of the Chumash was Lo Yavor. It should not be removed, a more bland language. 4, 5, 6. Question 7. We are 8 lines or so from the bottom of Mem Dalet Amud Aleph. Let's continue. V'tiglachas, when it comes to hair cutting, when at a time when you should not, we should say Lo Tusar Michlala. Maybe we should say that there are no built-in heterim at all. Why? Kal v'chomer miyayin. When it comes to wine, where there is no stira, there's nothing built in, there's no heterim built in, we know that it's always aser. So then tiglachas shesoseres, if it's going to be that tiglachas does have stira, eino din shelo tusar michlala, should be at least as strict, kal v'chomer. Says the Gemara, Amar Rachmana Rosho, Amar Rachmana Zikano. We know already from other psukim, and we learned this a couple of blot ago, that when there is a Nazir who overlaps with a Mitzorah, we know that there's a mitzvah to get a haircut for a Mitzorah during his Nazirus. And therefore, great svara, but we have already darshan these psukim, and we know that Rosho and Zikano teach us that there's an override, that there's a mitzvah of the Mitzorah to get a haircut even during his Nazirus. Question number 8. 5 lines from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, v'tiglachas, maybe getting a haircut, we should say lo tistor klal. Maybe we should say that a tiglachas shouldn't have a stira of 30 days. Maybe a tiglachas should have a stira of 0 days, just like the wine. Kal v'chomer miyayin. What's the svara? Uma yayin shelo hutar michlalo eno soser. Just like wine, which has no built-in heterim, there's no stira. It doesn't. If you drink in the middle, you're an avaria and you get malkos, but it doesn't change your count of days of your sfira. Then tiglacha shehutra michlala. Then when it comes to a haircut where there are built-in heterim, like we saw by the Mitzorah, eino din shelo tistor. Of course, it should be that there's no stira. Says the Gemara, you're right in svara, but here, not based on psukim, but based on a secondary practical issue. But inan gidol seyar v'haleka. The problem is that if you cut your hair, it's not long enough to cut again. That's why you need a stira of 30 days. It's not because of the psukim. It's not because your svara is bad, but tachlis, we need enough hair that you're going to be able to do something with it. Says the Gemara, for the final dizzying question of this spate of questions in the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom, why don't we say v'yayin yistor shloshim yom kal v'chomer mitiglachas? Why don't we say that yayin, okay, it shouldn't be like tuma, that it's soser es hakol, but maybe wine should be soser shloshim yom, and we should learn it from tiglachas. Uma tiglachas shehutra michlala soseres. When it comes to tiglachas, where there are built-in heterim, but if you break the rules, it's soseres. Yain shalohu tar michlalo. Wine has a chumrah to it, and if wine has a chumrah to it, it should be at least be as strict as the other case. Eno din sheyistor. There should at least be some form of stira. So says the Gemara, no. Midi hu taima ela mishum gidosear kabe yain hakaim saro. You can't compare these two, as we already discussed in the previous 8th question, which is that when it comes to seir, the reason you're waiting is because of hair. Can't learn from that case. When you're drinking the wine, you still have hair on your head. So you can still, that's not a stira. That's not grounds for stira. And that's how the Gemara asks its 9th question, ending this Mishnah. Again, not difficult in and of itself, but each one of these requires a couple of minutes for the juices to sink in. None of these questions are hard. They just, it's like, again, it's a little, for me, I find it dizzying. I don't know about you. It's like too quick. They're all so similar in their structure. I find it dizzying. Okay, we spoke about, we're on the top of Mem Daled and Beis. We're going to go to the Mishnah on Mem Hey Amud Aleph. We spoke about earlier in the Masechta Tiglachas Tuma, and that is that if a person becomes Tamei Meis, how do they get out of their Tuma? They have to go through the 7 days of the Tara process, and they need to get a haircut. So it says the Mishnah on the top of Mem Daled and Tiglachas Tuma Ketzad. What's the process? And the Mishnah responds, he gets sprinkled on days 3 and 7. Umegalech b'shvi, on that 7th day he can get a haircut. And then umevi korbanosa b'shmini. And then he can bring his korbanos on the 8th day. Why is it that he has to bring his korbanos on the 8th day? Because he has to wait for Herav Shemesh. He has to wait until the end of the 7th day. It's like when a woman goes to the mikvah, we don't go during the 7th day, but for the rare scenarios when a woman is allowed to go during the mikvah, no touching until nighttime. Yeah, that's mamash asr, not even to be b'yichud. The poskim discussed this. There were big kulas over the years if there were very dangerous neighborhoods, if the only way it's safe to go to the mikvah is during the day, a whole bunch of kulas. Some of these kulas even apply nowadays. Fine, but Lamaisa, if you require darkness, right? It's not darkness by nida, that's mamash halacha, but by herav shemesh, it's a separate din. We need the sun to set. So here we had to wait until day 8. On the 7th day, he had gone to the mikveh in the morning and brought his korbanos, but he can't. He had gotten his haircut on the 7th day, but he can't bring his korbanos until day 8. What if he waited a day for the giluach? In the previous case, on line 2, he was megalech b'shvi. What if he's megalech b'shmini? So then, can he bring the korbanos that day? Maybe korbanos of bo bayom to Rabbi Kiva. Why? You don't have to worry about herav shemesh. That day passed already. Day 7 is over. The korbanos aren't rooted in giluach. The korbanos are rooted in herav shemesh. So you're fine. Except that you're not fine, because I'm going to Rabbi Tarfon to Rabbi Akiva. I disagree. Ma ben zel mitzora. When it comes to a mitzora, if a mitzora gets his haircut on day 8, he can't bring his korbanos till day 9. Yet over here, by the case of the tiglachas tuma, here we said that if you get the giluach on the shmini, you can bring your korbanos on the shmini. So Rabbi Tarfon doesn't seem to agree with Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva responds, Amarle zeta raso, when it comes to our case of tiglachas tuma, so then tluya this person, the tiglachas tuma, ta raso tluya beyamav. And therefore, we were focused on the 7th day being completed. So once the 7th day is completed, you have herav shemesh. You can bring your korbanos on day 8, irrelevant of when you do giluach. However, umetzora ta'araso tuli b'tiglachto. Oh, this is the chakira. In our case, the korbanos were rooted in the yomim, and because day 7 had finished and you have herav shemesh, you can bring your korbanos. But when it comes to the mitzora, it's rooted in the haircut. So once the haircut is done, then we need a delay for another day before korbanos. That's why mitzora taras tuli b'tiglachto ve'enu mevi korban elim kein hayamu rav shemesh, and you need herav shemesh from the tiglachas, not from the mikvah. You need it from something else, and therefore the Mishnah concludes this one. And the Gemara is bothered because while Rabbi Tarfon does get an answer from Rabbi Akiva, we don't hear back from Rabbi Tarfon. We don't know if Rabbi Tarfon was mekabel the answer that Rabbi Akiva doled out.
This korban no, it would be double shemesh, right?
I don't know the answer to that. What's the case?
I'm just curious if the day that it should falls out 3 shots like the bris, you have to do it. But if it's
Probably.
Probably. Because I think get later.
Is the haircut allowed on Shabbos? I have no idea.
Oh, right. So, more so.
It's mamish gozes d'oraisa.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's a tolda of gozes if you cut your hair. I think it's still Nisr d'oraisa, but I think it's a tolda because only animals were done. Kein shaheh b'mikdash.
Right, and the idea was that they wanted the hair here.
need to remove it, it's not, it's the
Oh, it's
animals.
klish malachto. It's a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. Wow, is this Rabbanan to get a haircut on Shabbos? How is that? What's this Deraisa? No, malacha she'ena tzricha legufa according to Rabbi Shadif is Rabbanan. That's half of a fella. That can't be.
I believe it's still necessary, but I'm not sure.
Yes, but I didn't even think about the fact that they need the hair. That's Kain Shahaya b'Mikdash. I don't know any Torah. It's like embarrassing at some point, So it says the Gemara. I have no idea. I don't know the answer to your question, and I want to find out now. Not that it's going to change my behavior, but I am curious. I love this. Okay, Kibla Minei Olo. Did Rabbi Tarfon accept the response of Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva had responded, no. There's a difference between Tiglachas Tuma, where the korbanos are rooted in the Yamim, versus Mitzora, where the korbanos are rooted in the Giluach. So Tashma, let's see. The Brisa says in the name of Hillel, Gilech b'shmini, if there is a Giluach on the 8th day, maybe korbanosa b'chi, which we see that there's still a delay. Had he agreed that it was rooted in the days and nothing else, then he should have had that korban for the Tiglachas Tuma to be brought on the 8th day. So maybe we have a raya that he was not mekabel. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava lo kasha, that's not correct. We don't know when they went to the mikvah. It could just be that it's rooted in the hair of Shemesh of the mikvah, but we don't know in both prices when they went to the mikvah, so it's not clear. So therefore, there's not a raya. This next sugya actually bears some very important weight with discussions of going to Harabayis, as we'll soon see about when one is allowed and not allowed to go to Harabayis. A bit of a complicated question, but I'm going to do my very best to keep it clear. And this is as follows. Amar Abaye, Ashkachtinhu lechavre, the Rav Nosson bar Hoshai, the Yasmin v'ka'amrim. Abaye saw the chevra of Rav Nosson bar Hoshai, and they were talking about the following pasuk. The pasuk says, "Uba lifnei Hashem el Pesach ol moed unesanam el hakohen." This pasuk is talking about a zav. You have to stay on track with. There's so many. We've talked about a Nazir, a Mitzora, and a Zav so far in one small Amud of Shas, which is fairly typical for Shas, but still it's confusing. This pasuk is talking about a Zav. Okay, and it says that he's supposed to be Ba Lifnei Hashem. When is this? Emasai hu ba, bisman shehu taval v'asa herav shemesh in. Only after he has gone to the mikvah and has herav shemesh. What day is that by definition? Day 8. Because herav shemesh is after day 7. Lo taval ve'asa herav shemesh lo. But if he didn't go to the mikvah and didn't achieve herav shemesh, then he's not allowed to go to the Beis HaMikdash, to the Ohel Moed. Alma, we see that kasavar tvul yom shel zav kizav dami. That on the day of the tvul yom, which is the 7th day, that's the day he went to the mikvah, but before herav shemesh, a tvul yom is defined by I've gone to the mikvah on the 7th day, but I haven't seen sunset yet. So therefore, it seems that the tvul yom is treated like the Tvul Yom of a Zav is treated like a Zav himself. Meaning there's no real difference in Tuma status for the Zav if he's gone to the mikvah or not as it relates to going to the Beis HaMikdash, because until Herav Shemesh, you're not allowed into the Beis HaMikdash. So a Zav, a Tvul Yom Zav, and the Zav Mamish, meaning, let's say it this way, a day 6 Zav who hasn't gone to the mikvah, and a day 7 Zav who has gone to the mikvah, neither of them can go to the Beis HaMikdash. Afal pi that he went to the mikvah, because we're missing herav shemesh. So says Abaye, Amina lahon, I heard them talking and I said to them, Amina lahon ana, elameata, if that's true, then we have a problem. Because Gabi Nazir Tameh, when a Nazir becomes Tameh, Nami, we have a similar halacha, Dichsiv, skip the parentheses, it's literally incorrect as to what the pasuk says. That pasuk, which is talking about a Nazir Tameh, says, El HaKohen El Pesach Ohel Moed. And that's also talking about the 8th day. But if that's true, then Emasai Huba, Bisman Shetava Vasa Herav Shemesh, that he's allowed to show up on the 8th day, how does that all work out? Michti, where was he going in the Beis HaMikdash, this Nazir Tameh? Share Nikanor Hecha Kayamin B'Share Levia. That is not the innermost camp. It's this was by the Mishkan, not by the Beis HaMikdash. But you had the Machane Yisrael, Machane Levia, and you had Machane Mikdash, Machane Kahuna. So by the Share Levia, that's where he was allowed. V'Atanya, in that space, Tamei Meis Muterli Kanis Ben Machane Levia. Okay, remember this language. A tamei mace is allowed to be in the machane levia space. Below tamei mace bilvad el afilu mace atzmo. Wow, even a mace himself could be in the machane levia, not the machane kahuna, but the machane levia. Shenemar vayikach Moshe atzmos Yosef imo. What does it mean? Atzmos Yosef imo. Why does vayikach Moshe atzmos Yosef? Period. Why does it say imo? My imo b'mechitza. So imo b'machane levia. Moshe was a Levi, and he was able to bring the bones in that space. And if that's true, then the zav should also be allowed to be in that space. You said that the zav of day 6 and the zav of day 7 are the same because there's no hair of shemesh. That's not correct, because the zav because the Nazir Tameh was able to be there based on Psukim and Chumash. He was allowed to be there. Tameh's mace. Why can't he be there? So it says the Gemara, you're right. Elo Amar Abaye. And for this, we need to little slap on the wrist to the editors of our Gemaras, because even here it's not written correctly. Amar Abaye Tvul Yom Shel Zav Lav Kizav Dami. Just a small, tiny word missing there. A little bit of a small word, but if you look in the Hagos Meforshim here, Hagos V'Tziyonim, he corrects it in one of two ways. He either says it's not Amar Abaye, right? He says it's a different shita, but that doesn't seem to be correct either, because Tosfos and the Rosh say that it's Ela Amar Abaye Tvul Yom Dezav Lav Kizav Dami, and therefore Abaye corrected that chevra. You wanted to say that the guy who's a Tvul Yom is not allowed to enter the mikdash. That's not true. The Tvul Yom can enter the mikdash even as a Tamei Mace, because we see that by Nazir Tamei that he's allowed to do that. But, and this is where we come in with the going up to the Harabaye stuff. The afilu hachi, even though it might well be true that a person who is a Tvul Yom is allowed to enter the mikdash space, the afilu hachi came in the mechusar kapara lo ayil. Because he's not able to achieve kapara, then you can't go. That's us. That's us. If we're Tamei Mace and we're Mechusar Kapara, then you can't go up to those particular places. So again, you can already see flavors of this as to how it might impact where exactly one can go up on the Mikdash. If we're only talking about Machan Elavia, Mai Kakari Le Ohel Moed. What? No, we're talking about someone who's a Zav. Zav, Zava. That was the earlier sugya, which we were correcting. Abai was correcting the first part of the sugya. In the first part of the sugya, our assumption was that Zav, who's a Tvul Yom, is treated like a Zav. And the Gemara says, no, he's really not treated like a Zav. But he still can't go up because he's Mechusar Kapara. So it's still catch 22. So you could bring Korbanos, you're Mechusar Kapara, so you're stuck. Catch 22. Sorry, that wasn't clear. So then the Gemara says, hang on 1 second. If what we're talking about is Shar Nikanor, you're going to this door where it's only a Machan Elavia, but look back at the pasuk. What did the pasuk say? Amaika Karile Ohel Moed. Ohel Moed is Machan Kahuna. So why did you say in the pasuk Ohel Moed? Says the Gemara, Lememra, Mahasa Mechusar Kapara Lo Ayil. Just like over there in the Machaneh Kahuna by the Ohel Moed, if you're a Mechusar Kapara, you can't go in. Afla Machaneh Elavia Nami Mechusar Kapara Lo Ayil. We extend the din of Mechusar Kapara from the world of Ohel Moed, which is the innermost camp, to even one rung out, which is the Machaneh Levia. How do we know that over there in the Ohel Moed, that if you're Mechusar Kapara, you're not allowed to be in that space? So says the Gemara, and with this we'll close the last brisa of the day, Tanya. The brisa says, Tamei Rabos Tvul Yom, and Otu Masabo Rabos Mechusar Kapara. These people can be included, but if you're lacking your Mechusar Kapara, then you're not allowed to be in the Ohel Moed. We'll stop right here. We'll pick up in Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow with a blot and a half. Wishing you all a beautiful night.